Hey everybody, so in this video what we're going to talk about is we're going to give an introduction to Fmod, and we are going to look at a branching project. A branching project basically will wait until the end of a phrase before making a decision about going on to a new phrase or rolling back and playing, looping another phrase or something like that. So first thing that I'm going to need you guys to do is to download Fmod, and so if you go to fmod.org and then go to the download page, this is where you can download Fmod Studio. So that's what I'm going to do first. I'm going to go down to Fmod Studio Authoring Tool and then download that to my downloads folder. And once I do that, then I'm going to install it. And so I'm going to open up my folder, and I'm downloading, and I'm almost done downloading. And then I'm going to just look at my applications folder. And I do have an older version here, so I'm going to install the new version once it's downloaded. And then we're going to take a look at it. So there it is. I'm going to go ahead and run the installer. And I'm going to drag the folder into applications folder. Since I already have an old version, I'm going to replace the older version. And once I've done that, I can eject the drive, and there's the new version of Fmod Studio. And what I'll do is double click on the application itself. Now Fmod Studio is very similar to Pro Tools or Cubase or Logic. They have a lot of similarities, and they're also a little different. So I'm going to close the introduction window. I'm going to save the project, so I'm going to save this project and put it on my desktop here, and I'll call it Fmod Practice. And I have my first Fmod Practice session, and when I do that, by the way, it builds a folder and it puts data inside that folder. That's the data that basically everything that I do in Fmod is going to be contained in this folder, so that if I need to pass it to someone else so that someone else can work on it, it's all right there. It will always be in this folder. Okay, so let's take a look at Fmod Studio. It's built up of different windows here, and over on the left-hand side of the page are events. An event is basically a sequence unto its own. So for instance, one of those events that I build, and I'm going to build a 2D event. The 2D event, oh, there we go, 2D event. A 3D event is one that's going to be spatialized in a 3D world. A 2D event is going to be spatialized in a 2D world. Since I'm dealing just with music right now, 2D is just fine. And then what I'm going to name this event, I'm going to name it like Level 1 Music. And I can have lots of different events representing different things. I could have 3D events, one called Footsteps. I could have another 2D event here, which would be Level 2 Music. And each one of these has its own track layout. So level 1 music, let's say that has 2 or 3 audio tracks. Level 2 music is still going to have just one audio track. Each one carries with it its own set of audio tracks. And just a few things about the differences between and the similarities between this and, say, Pro Tools. So I'm just going to be dealing with level 1 music here. So I'm going to save my project. And whenever I select something up here, information about it or the properties appear down below. So the master track, for instance, has its own set of properties, and then each audio track has its own set of properties as well. And I can use this. Here's the master fader for audio 1, track audio 1, and I can add in effects to that. I also have the ability to run sends and buses as well as side chaining events and things like that. We're not going to do any of that for right now. We're just going to sort of explore some general features that we have. And so I pulled in a game I did a long time ago called Netwits. And Netwits was a game that I did for Microsoft back in 1996, so just over 20 years ago. and here's what the music sounds like. It was an online game show, and so it was a little kitschy. It's like the golden age of television kind of TV show with a Dean Martin type of host. And anyways, you can look it up if you want to. In any case, so I have audio track 1, and I just dragged in a WAV file. And what did that do to the folder? So I can go back to my desktop. If I look in Fmod practice, it actually copied that music file directly to my assets folder, and that's really useful because now I know that's all contained within that folder, so if I need to zip it up and give it to someone, I can do that. And if I play the track, this is the chat room music, by the way, so you entered in and you started chatting with other people and stuff like that. Very simple, a little jazz driven in some horns and things like that. And so far, it's exactly like a regular DAW, but I'm going to show you a few features that make it different than a DAW. One of the things that you can do is you can manipulate the timeline in kind of interesting ways. And so what I'm going to do is add some markers to my timeline, and also, so I added 2 markers. By the way, I'm right-clicking here. Right-clicking is always your friend. If you see something, right-click, and it adds usually a bunch of different functionality. So over here I can right-click and select a new event, or just select an event and go back here. So I have 2 markers in here, and I also have, these are just standard markers like any DAW, but I have these special transitions that allow me to manipulate the timeline to go back to a marker. So I can go back to marker A in the timeline. So let me zoom in a little bit. So I'm going to put marker A at the beginning of that loop that we heard before. So here's the beginning of the loop, and I'm not sure quite where the end of the loop is, but I'm going to play it and find out. So actually it's right there, so I'll go ahead and move my mark. So this is the transition here, and I'm going to go ahead and move it to that point there. So if you check this out, now when I play it, this is what happens. It's not perfect, but I could go back and I can zoom in and make that a little bit perfect. But basically what I can do is start manipulating the timeline in interesting ways. And so this project, what we're going to do is we're going to split up an audio file into little sections, loop those sections, and then make decisions about where we want, which one of those we want to play. So I'm going to go ahead and sort of clean this up a little bit. And then, so that's a little introduction, and we'll kind of delete these markers and things. And I'm going to go ahead and go to my piece of music, and I'm actually going to manipulate this in a DAW. I'm going to use Twisted Wave for this, but you could use Audacity, you could use Cubase, or you could use Reason if you wanted to, or Pro Tools. Any sequencer would work. And what I want to do is create an intro and an outro and then 5 loops. So I'll go ahead and start doing that and showing you what I would do. So I have my loop, and my intro is just that horn riff at the very beginning, and then I'll sort of zoom in and just capture that and export that just as a wave. So I'll copy it, create a new file, paste it into that file, and then save it out, and I'll call this loop intro. Save it out to my desktop. This is what it sounds like. Sorry, it's so loud. It's plus 12 dB, of course. It's very loud. All right, save that. And then I'm going to capture my loop here. And I don't know how long it lasts. I kind of have to, it's not 10 seconds, but let me zoom out a little bit and sort of listen to it. So what I want to do is capture as much of the loop as possible. I would say all the loops that you are capturing should be less than about 12 seconds. Otherwise, if they get bigger than 12 seconds, it takes too long to sort of get through a section. So make sure your loops are less than 12 seconds. And I'm going to zoom in here, kind of look at where this starts and where it ends, and just play it. That's pretty close, except Still a little funky at the end. That's pretty clean. Copy. Then I'm going to place that into a new document, and I'm going to call this just simply loop 1. And then I'm going to go to my next section, which probably begins down here someplace. Yeah, there's a little, yeah, here. So it's just a 2-bar, oops, just a 2-bar loop that I have. Oops. And that's my later loop. When you go back, that's where it starts, right there. It's just that really simple loop there. Wow, you know what? Michael Sweet's Bad Editing 101. It goes to about there. 2, 3, 4, right there. Alright, so I'll sort of move that back. Okay, and then I'll copy and place that in a new document, and then save this out as loop 2. Okay, now I can continue through my document and do this, and again, when you do this yourself, what you want to do is you want to have one intro file, one outro file, then you want to have 5 different loops, and the 5 different loops should represent phrases of less than 12 seconds. Or about that. Some of my phrases are really short, some of mine are longer. It depends on the type of music that you're editing. Now, I've already done this and kind of created them and put them in a folder called Music Splits. And if I go back to my Fmod session now, what I can do is start dragging those in. So I can drag the intro in, like so. I can drag in loop 1, like so. And drag in loop 2. And I'm going to drag them in and just put them sort of on wherever the next demarcation point is. So 3, 4, 5, and then at the end I want to just put the ending, like so. Okay. I can get rid of this right-hand space. I don't really need it, so I just drag and click off of it. And so my piece is all split up now. So it's all split up, it's brought in. I'm going to save. Remember, all the assets have now gone into my folder. So this is my Fmod folder here, and I can see that it's copied in all those assets for me, which is cool. All right. So next part that I want to do is I want to label each section. So I'll add a marker here, and I'll just use the standard marker conventions that they have. So marker C, add another one. This is all right-clicking, by the way. Right-click, add marker, and then one more for the end. I didn't put one at the beginning. I don't really need one at the beginning. I'll explain why in a minute. In fact, I don't need 2 other tracks. I just need 1. But I could put these on other tracks if I wanted to. All right, the first thing I want to do is set in a transition that basically goes back to marker A. So I just drag that to the end like that, and then this would play like this. And it's just going to repeat that section. And I'm going to go ahead and put one in for this section too. So I go transition back to B, like that, and put it at the end here. And this again would go back to B. So now I can start moving things together, and I'll show you how this starts to work. I can actually put marker B right there, move this back to loop 2, and put this at the end. And then I'm going to do the same thing with these other ones. So marker C is there, and I'm going to have another transition back to marker C. And I know what you may be wondering, you might be like, well, Michael, I get all that, but you know what I don't understand is, well, how do you stay, like, how do you move on? Like, how do you, well, these little transition markers you can set to either turn on or off based on a parameter, like a game parameter. And I'll show that in just a second after I sort of line these up. So this goes back to marker D, and then we have marker E, which is our last section here, and I have a repeat on marker E. Transition back to marker E. Come on, okay. And then I have the end. So here's my end. And I actually don't need marker F, so I'm going to get rid of that. So right now, my piece plays out like this. Oh wow, I have to do these all over again. Okay. Yeah, I should have lined it up with the intro at the very beginning, but it doesn't take me too long to kind of redo this part. And then to show you how this works from a gameplay context. So this could be checkpoints within a game. Each one of these could represent like a checkpoint. Like I've gotten to, I finished the first puzzle, I've killed the first enemy, something like that. So here I go back to the beginning. Plays the intro, then it plays this region over and over and over again. Now, here's where the magic comes in a little bit. Not really magic. This marker A right here, I can use a game parameter to control whether that transition happens or not. In order to add a parameter that is received from a game, what I can do is say, I can go up here to a little plus sign and say add parameter, and let's call it checkpoints. And it goes from 0 to 6 checkpoints. And then it adds this up here, 0 to 6. And it also adds a separate sort of tab. We don't have to worry about this tab right now. In other classes we may explore that, but we go back to the timeline and select our transition. So here's marker A, here's the transition A, and then what I can do is add a condition, checkpoint. When checkpoint is below 1, it's going to repeat. And when it's above 1, it's not going to repeat. So let's check this out. So 0, checkpoint is 0. Remember, when it's from 0 to below 1, it's going to repeat. But as soon as I get above 1, it continues on. And that's the cool part. This one will always continue. So what we want to do is go and change that to, so to marker B, we want to change it so that there's a condition on that, so that the checkpoint, when it's between 0 and just before 2, it's going to repeat. So in this section now, it's going to repeat this. It's always going to repeat. And then when we get above 2, it will continue. And then we have to do the same with marker C. And so we'll kind of add in the checkpoint, and we'll do this from 0 to right before 3. We'll do this one to go from 0 to just before 4. And this one to just before 5. So I can get them to play all the way through if I just run it up to 5. So I could, for instance, if I start it and I go back to the beginning, right now it's set to 0, so it's going to keep going. Remember, because this marker right here, if I zoom in a little bit, that marker is set to repeat from 0 to 0.9. So if I'm above 0.9, like 1.2, it's going to continue. And it's going to continue if this is above 1.9. And then I'm just going to put that at 6, and that's just going to continue through because each one, it's above the repeat marker, and just go right to the end. And that's kind of how you build a branching project within Fmod. And that's what your assignment is for this week. You should, sorry, for a week after next. So what you should do when you look at this, you want to grab a piece from the composer that you chose and you want to split it up into phrases. Those phrases should be less than 12 seconds each, and then build a little template like this so that you can actually get it so that it works interactively, and that you can use checkpoint, you can use, it doesn't have to be name checkpoint, but it could be. That also could represent other things like health, 0 to 100. It could represent represent the number of enemies. I just used checkpoint because I felt like, oh, there are 6 sort of checkpoints through this, and that's what I'm using. But it could be any game parameter that you choose. Anyways, let me know if you have any questions, and good luck with the assignment.